The theater buzzed with the gentle noise of award season week. Lights hummed above like a warm sky. Assistants hurried by with clipboards and soft headsets. Sandra arrived through the side entrance, wearing an easy smile that made people relax. She greeted the security guard by name. She thanked the young stylist who fixed a loose hem. She asked a camera operator how his new baby was doing. People noticed this. It felt like sunlight coming into a busy room. A production assistant guided her to a dressing room. The room was simple, a mirror lined with bulbs, a small vase of flowers, a bottle of water with a paper label that read "Thank you." She sat for makeup and chatted about the crew's long day. She asked the hair artist if the schedule was too tight and offered to keep her look simple if it helped the timing. Sandra had done this many times. She understood the rhythm of live television. She knew the best way to stay calm was to help others feel calm, too. On the other side of the hall, Keanu arrived with the quiet air of someone who liked to listen first. He greeted the stage manager with a small nod and a kind word. He held the door open for a sound tech whose hands were full of cables. He moved through the space as if he were a guest in someone else's home, which, in a way, he was. He asked where he should wait. "Backstage left, please," the stage manager said. He thanked her and took his place, out of the way, watching the clock. In the studio, the host warmed up the audience with light talk and easy jokes. The band played a bright tune that lifted the seats. People clapped in rhythm. The screens above the stage showed soft graphics and highlights from recent films. The show was well run. The timing was good. The crew knew how to dance together without stepping on each other's toes. It felt like a train arriving exactly when it should. Sandra walked to the wings with a calm breath and a straight posture. She tapped her chest once, a tiny private reminder to be present. The stage manager counted down with fingers, 3, 2, 1. The band dipped, and the host turned toward the entrance with a big smile. "Please welcome," the doors opened. Sandra stepped into the light. The audience rose in a warm wave of applause. She smiled, lifted her hand in thanks, and took her seat in the soft chair beside the desk. The start was friendly. The host asked about her latest project. Sandra described the team, the long hours, and the joy of building something together. She told a small story about a rainy night shoot and how the crew kept spirits high by sharing warm tea in paper cups. The audience laughed softly. The show felt gentle and steady. She kept her answers short and clear, so the editor would have clean cuts if needed. She was thinking of the team. That was her way. Then the tone shifted. The host tried a playful line about age and beauty, a joking comment that poked at a personal place. It was not loud or harsh. But the room stilled in a small, visible way. Sandra's smile stayed, but her eyes blinked once as she chose her path. She could push back. She could let it pass. She could redirect. She decided to be steady and kind. She answered with a simple truth about craft, that good work comes from showing up, preparing well, and caring about the people beside you. The audience eased again, but the host reached for another joke. It tried to make the same point, only sharper. Laughter came late and thin. Some people looked at their shoes. The cameras found a polite face in the second row. The band leader glanced at the producer. The producer's mouth tightened in thought. Live shows move fast. One choice can pull the room to a better place or a worse one. Everyone could feel the line they did not want to cross. Sandra did something small and graceful. She thanked the host for the chance to talk and pivoted back to the film. She talked about the costume team who worked through the night to fix a last-minute issue. She praised a new actor who arrived early and stayed late to learn everyone's names. She lifted others, gently guiding the conversation away from herself and toward the work. It was like placing a steady hand on a shaking table. The cups stopped rattling. Backstage, Keanu watched from the shadows. He stood with easy posture, hands together, attention forward. He saw the slight change in the room's energy, the way humor, when not careful, can press too hard. He thought about the times he had been helped by kind, quiet people who got very little thanks. He remembered a day on set years ago, when Sandra had stayed late to rehearse a tricky scene because a camera move needed another try. She did not complain. She just did the work, and the day was saved. A production assistant tapped Keanu's shoulder and showed him a timing card. He would go on after Sandra. He nodded. He asked softly if the crew needed anything from him when he came out. "Just your usual calm," the assistant said with a grateful grin. He smiled back. Calm could be a gift. Sometimes it was the best one you could bring. On stage, the host changed topics, but the air still held a small tension. Sandra answered with clarity and warmth, careful to keep the space safe. She told a story about a fan who had written a letter about how a movie helped her through a hard week. She did not make herself the center of the story, she made the fan the hero, and the team the helpers. The audience leaned in. People want to feel seen. People want stories that leave them taller, not smaller. The next segment break arrived. The band played a short bridge. A commercial rolled on the studio monitors. The lights softened to standby. The stage manager crossed to Sandra and offered water. Sandra thanked her and took a small sip. The host's face softened, too. He looked down at his cards and then looked up. He made a light comment about the weather and asked if the studio was too cold. Sandra smiled and said she had brought a shawl in her bag. The stage manager smiled, too. Small resets matter. Keanu stood ready at the entrance, but not with tense energy. He chose a quiet breath and a clear intention. He would bring a tone that honored the room. He would lift, not press. He would protect, not attack. He knew that tone is a kind of music, and music can change how people think and feel. If he could set a better key, the rest of the night might sing. The countdown returned, 3, 2, 1. The band brightened. The host introduced Keanu with a cheerful, familiar welcome. Keanu stepped into the light with a modest wave. The crowd answered with warm applause. He shook the host's hand and then turned first to the crew. He gave a small nod toward the camera operator, the stage manager, the band. These gestures took no time, but they spoke loudly, "I see you. Thank you." He sat down and answered the first question simply. He spoke about his project in a way that included the people around him. He gave credit. He laughed softly at himself when a story called for it. He left space for others to breathe. He did not fill the room. He made the room feel bigger. The audience relaxed its shoulders. The camera lens seemed to grow friendlier, as if it, too, liked the change in air. In Sandra's dressing room, her assistant watched the monitor and smiled. The crew in the hallway walked a little lighter, noticing the shift. The band leader set down a pen he had been tapping. The producer lifted her headset slightly and whispered, "Good. Keep this energy." The show was finding its balance again. A live show is a living thing. It can learn. It can change course with the right hands on the wheel. Sandra returned to the stage for a short shared segment. She greeted Keanu with a happy, familiar warmth. They traded small, respectful memories from an old project, arriving early, doing homework, being patient when something broke and needed fixing. There were no grand speeches, only simple notes about how to treat people well and how to make the work better. The audience listened with full attention, because the truth often speaks in soft voices. The host asked a question about what makes a set feel safe. Sandra said that a safe set is one where people are allowed to do their best work, where kindness is not a special event, and where everyone's time is treated with respect. Keanu added that a safe room is one where you can say, "I don't know yet," and still feel trusted to learn. These words were plain and clear, and they fell into the room like small anchors. The show stopped drifting. When the segment wrapped, the band played a mellow line. The lights eased. The applause sounded different now, less loud, more true. The stage manager called cut, and the crew moved with new ease. Sandra thanked the host and walked toward the wings. She did not carry any hard feeling with her. She carried the peace that comes from making good choices under bright lights. Keanu followed, steady and kind, ready to thank the people who made the moment work. In the hallway, Sandra's assistant handed her the shawl with a smile. Keanu asked a camera operator how his shoulder was holding up after a long day. The operator laughed and said the camera felt lighter now. It was a joke, but also a little true. The room felt lighter because the tone had changed. It changed because people chose their words with care. It changed because grace is strong when it shows up on time. Back at the desk, the host looked down at the note cards and then looked up, thoughtful. Live shows teach, too. They teach how quickly a moment can turn and how kindly it can be turned back. The producer made a small mark in her prep document: more questions about craft, fewer comments about appearance. Not a rule made from fear, but a guide made from respect. The team would be better tomorrow than they were today. Sandra reached her dressing room and took a slow breath. She felt grateful to the crew, to the audience, and to the friend who had entered the stage like a quiet hand on a rattling table. She knew that every public moment is also a chance to model private values. She hoped someone watching, maybe a young actor, maybe a host, maybe a person at home, would take that lesson into their own room. She set down her water, thanked the last person still fixing cables, and prepared to step back into the night with steady joy. The hallway felt different after the first segment, like a room that had just found fresh air. Crew members moved with a little more ease. The stage manager checked her clipboard and whispered, "Good tempo," to herself. Sandra stepped aside while a wardrobe assistant adjusted the shawl on her shoulder. She thanked her softly, then asked if the assistant had eaten. The assistant smiled and said she would grab a snack after the next break. Keanu stood near a lighting rack, reading the room without intruding. He noticed how people's faces had softened. He kept his hands lightly folded and his voice low when he spoke. The host sat behind the desk and flipped through cards with a thoughtful look. His producer leaned down to share a note. He nodded, tapped the card stack, and exhaled. In the control room, the technical director watched multiple screens. One monitor showed live comments from the show's stream. Kind words were rising. People were asking for more stories about the work and the team behind it. A social media coordinator typed with quick, calm hands. She clipped a short moment from the previous talk, Sandra praising the costume team, and prepared a clean caption. She kept the words respectful and clear. Backstage, a camera operator rolled his shoulder and laughed with a colleague. "Feels smoother now," he said. "Like someone turned down the noise and turned up the people." His colleague nodded. Sandra's assistant checked her messages. Friends had texted her small notes: "Loved how you lifted the crew, that story about the rainy night was beautiful, you handled that with such grace." The assistant smiled and showed Sandra one of the notes. Sandra smiled back, warm and quiet. Keanu received a brief whisper from a production assistant. The next segment would include a joint question about what makes a good set. He nodded once. He knew exactly what he believed. The band leader worked out a softer bridge for the return. He told the drummer to keep it simple and steady. "Let the room breathe," he said with a grin. The host took a sip of water and looked out at the audience. Many faces looked hopeful now. He could see their shoulders had dropped, their hands resting calmly on their laps. He turned to the producer and said, in a voice too low to carry, "I want to reset this right." The producer gave a small thumbs up. "Ask about craft," she said. "Follow their lead." The countdown began again. The lights brightened. Music rose, then gracefully dipped. The cameras found their marks, and the red light came alive. Sandra and Keanu returned to their chairs. The host greeted them with a measured smile. "You both have worked with many teams," he said. "What have you learned about taking care of a room?" Sandra spoke first. She said a good room starts with respect for time and names. She said it's not hard to ask how someone's day is going, and it's powerful to listen to the answer. She offered a small story about a new intern who made a checklist that saved an entire morning. She didn't name the person, she celebrated the habit. The audience leaned in. Keanu added a memory about a stunt rigger who quietly stayed late to teach him a safer way to land. He talked about how gratitude makes people braver and calmer at the same time. He said when people feel safe, they do their best work. The host listened carefully and didn't rush to the next card. He let a few beats of silence rest in the air. The silence felt kind. A teacher sat in the third row with two film students. She nudged them gently. They were taking notes without being told. They had never seen a live show feel like a class in care. The camera moved to a wide shot, showing the three of them at the desk. On the monitor, it looked like a small circle, the kind where ideas travel well. The control room adjusted framing to leave generous space. During the next short break, the host turned to Sandra. He spoke softly and sincerely. He apologized for words that landed in a way he didn't want. Sandra met his eyes and accepted the apology with a calm, steady tone. She thanked him for the reset. "We're all learning in public," she said. "That's brave work." Keanu nodded in quiet support, not making the moment bigger than it needed to be. The stage manager called time. Everyone returned to their places, lighter now. The band brought them back with a gentle line that felt like a smile. The host asked about teamwork again, but from a different angle. "How do you keep joy in a long, hard project?" Sandra laughed softly and said, "We share snacks and small wins." She described a day when someone wrote thank you notes and taped them to cases and carts. It took 5 minutes and lifted a whole week. The audience murmured happily. Keanu spoke about sharing credit. He said that when a scene goes well, he likes to name 2 or 3 people who made it possible. He said it teaches the brain to look outward, and looking outward makes fear smaller. Messages started landing on the social team's dashboard. A mother wrote, "Watching with my daughter, thank you for reminding us to be kind." A lighting tech from another city wrote, "I feel seen tonight." The coordinator pinned the notes. In the hallway, a grip adjusted a stand and listened through a nearby monitor. He smiled and told a junior crew member, "This is why we do it. It's not just the show. It's how we do the show." The host glanced at the band leader and raised a card with the word crew on it. The band leader nodded and prepared a quick tag. The host said into the camera, "We want to thank the people who make this possible." He called out the departments by name: camera, sound, lighting, stage management, band, wardrobe, makeup, props, writers, assistants. The camera briefly showed their faces, bright with surprise and delight. Sandra lifted her hand and gave the crew a sincere wave. Keanu clapped softly. The audience joined in with real, warm applause. It wasn't loud because it was big, it was loud because it was honest. Backstage, the producer took a note in her show Bible: "Close with crew thanks when energy is fragile." She underlined it. She knew they had learned something useful. During the final break before their goodbye, the host leaned toward Sandra and Keanu. "Thank you for teaching us in the gentlest way," he said. He didn't say more. It was enough. Sandra's assistant stepped in with fresh water. She whispered, "People are posting beautiful stories." Sandra's eyes softened. "That makes me happy," she said. Keanu texted a short message to his team: "Tone matters." Tonight was a good reminder. His publicist responded with a heart and nothing more. Some things did not need more words. The red light burned again for the closing moments. The host invited them to share one final thought. Sandra said, "Kindness is not slow. It's the fastest way to get good work." Keanu said, "Gratitude is a skill. Practice it daily." The band played them out with a gentle melody. The audience rose in a soft standing wave. The lights eased down, and the credits began to roll across the screens. As the show closed, the crew moved like a well-practiced orchestra. Cables were coiled. Mics were collected. Doors were held open. People thanked each other without being asked. In the control room, the director took off her headset and rubbed her eyes, smiling. "That turned," she said. "We made a better choice, and it turned." The technical director nodded, pleased. Outside the studio, the night air was cool and kind. A small group of fans waited behind a barrier. They did not shout. They waved and held signs that said simple things like "Thank you" and "We love your work." Sandra stopped to greet them with warmth. She asked a teenager about school and told her to keep creating. She signed a few programs and thanked everyone for coming. Keanu paused too, keeping the line moving with gentle order. He answered a quick question about learning new skills and advised patience. He said good things grow well when watered daily. The host stepped out quietly, not expecting anyone to notice. A crew member saw him and gave a small nod. The host nodded back with gratitude. He had been given grace and used it to grow. Back in the lobby, the producer gathered the writers for a short, friendly debrief. "Let's put a page in the guide," she said. "Less teasing about appearance. More curiosity about process." Pens moved. Heads agreed. The social team posted the clip of the crew thank you. The caption read, "The best part of the show is often off camera." Comments poured in, mostly from people who work behind the scenes. They felt included. Sandra's driver opened the car door. She turned once more to wave at the last fans. Then she sat with a peaceful sigh. Her assistant handed her a small snack and a bottle of water. Keanu's car arrived at the same time. He looked back at the studio doors, then to the stars above. He was not thinking about headlines. He was thinking about how a small choice had helped many people breathe easier. The city was gentle on that night, or maybe it only felt that way because the hearts in one building had grown softer. Taxis moved. Street lights hummed. Somewhere, a family watched the replay and felt seen. In homes across different time zones, people shared the clip with short notes: "This is how to do it, I needed this tone today, saving this for my students, this changed my mood." Small ripples began to travel. Inside the studio, the last lights went out, one switch at a time. The stage rested, but the lesson stayed awake in the minds of many. It would come back tomorrow as better questions, calmer eyes, kinder jokes. Sandra's car merged into the evening traffic. She leaned her head back and smiled at the quiet. She thought of the costume team, the intern with the checklist, the crew with steady hands. Her heart felt thankful. Keanu's car took a different route, past a mural that read "Be Good." He smiled at the message. It matched the night. It matched the work he hoped to do again and again. And somewhere in the host's apartment, a stack of cards sat on a kitchen table. A pen rested beside them. He would write new questions in the morning. He had a better compass now, and the map felt clearer. He morning after the show began with soft light on quiet streets and a gentle hum inside the studio. Emails arrived early. Messages lined up like small birds on a wire. The producer scrolled through notes from viewers. Many said the same thing in different words: "Thank you for choosing care. Thank you for listening." In the writer's room, a whiteboard held the skeleton of the next episode. Jokes had always lived there. Now, beside them, someone had written 3 short prompts: "Is it kind? Is it true? Is it helpful?" The words were plain. The team stared at them for a long moment and felt steadier. The host walked in with a cup of tea and a thoughtful face. He set the cup down and said, "I learned a lot last night." He didn't rush. He didn't defend himself. He asked the writers for their best questions about craft, teamwork, and joy. The room relaxed. The work could begin again, only better. Sandra woke early, as she often did on busy weeks, and answered a few kind messages with care. She kept her replies short and sincere. She thanked people who felt seen by the segment. She also checked on a crew member recovering from a cold and sent soup to their door. Small actions help rooms grow kinder, even when no cameras are around. Keanu rode to a quiet set for a rehearsal. In the car, he read a short thread from a stagehand in another city. The stagehand wrote, "Last night gave me hope." Keanu smiled and typed a gentle reply, "Thank you for your work. You make the room strong." It was one line, but it felt like a handshake. In the studio's control room, the technical director saved a template labeled "Respect Wide." It left more space on screen for moments that breathe. She told a colleague, "We can still be lively without being sharp. We can be fast without being careless." The colleague nodded and saved the template in a shared folder. A producer from another network called to compare notes, not for gossip, but for guidance. "We had a tense beat last month," she said. "Your reset gave me a map." They spoke about timing, language, and how to read a room with care. They agreed to share a simple checklist. They smiled. Industry neighbors can help each other grow. By mid-morning, a media school professor emailed the show asking permission to share the clip in class. She wrote, "This is a beautiful example of tone leadership." The producer replied with an enthusiastic yes and also shared a one-page summary of what the team had learned. The page was spare and useful, like a good tool. The host posted a short message online. It was not long, not polished, not designed to go big. He wrote, "I'm grateful for last night's guests. I'm learning to ask better questions. Thanks for the grace." Comments came in with warmth. People like to see growth without drama. They like to see real learning in real time. Sandra visited a small community center that afternoon for a previously planned reading program. Children sat on a rug with bright faces. None of them knew anything about last night. They just wanted stories. Sandra read aloud with energy and care. She told the kids that stories are houses where many people can feel safe at once. Keanu walked through a rehearsal for a quiet scene that required careful timing. He practiced a thank you he would give at the end of the day. He planned to name 3 crew members by role and by first name, to remind everyone that good work is shared work. He had learned this long ago. He was simply practicing it again. The host spent lunch speaking with 2 interns. He asked what they noticed last night. One intern said, "I saw how silence can be kind when it makes space." The other said, "I learned that redirecting is not avoiding, it's steering." The host smiled, humbled by their clear eyes. He wrote down their words and kept the page. The social team prepared a short follow-up clip titled "How We Keep a Room Safe." It featured quick comments from Sandra and Keanu about kindness and preparation, plus a few faces from the crew sharing small tips. They posted it with a simple caption, "Good rooms are made on purpose." The clip felt like a helpful sign on a busy corner. Late afternoon brought a meeting with the network standards team. They were curious, not critical. They asked about guidelines, tone notes, and ways to model respect without removing joy. The producer shared that the best jokes land when everyone can laugh, including the people in the room. The standards team smiled and said, "That's the rule we wanted." At the end of the day, the host filmed a brief opener for that night's show. He looked into the camera and said, "Last night, I made a joke that did not serve the room. I'm sorry. I'm grateful for the chance to learn on air, and I thank our guests for their kindness. Tonight, we'll focus on craft and care." It was short. It was enough. Sandra watched the opener later on her phone while waiting for a meeting. She felt a soft relief, the kind that comes when a circle closes with care. She sent a note to the producer, "Beautiful opener. Thank you for the gentle clarity." The producer replied with a smile emoji and a line, "You taught us in real time." Keanu received a message from a charity that supports behind-the-scenes workers during hard times. The note asked if he would consider sharing last night's clip to help raise awareness. He said yes and suggested inviting the host to do a segment honoring crew. He added, "Let's keep this about the people who make the work possible." That was his compass. That night's show felt different from the very first beat. The band played a warm, relaxed phrase. The host kept his voice steady and welcoming. The audience leaned forward, not to see a spark, but to see a glow. A mid-show segment featured 3 crew members sharing favorite moments when a team came together. The crowd cheered for them as if they were headliners. Messages flowed in again, but their tone had changed. A lighting designer wrote, "I feel proud of our field tonight." A parent commented, "I showed this to my kids so they can learn how to fix a moment with kindness." A young comic said, "I'm adding your 3 prompts to my notebook. Thank you." The social team saved these messages in a folder titled Good Fuel. Sandra's evening wrapped with a script meeting. She thanked everyone before leaving the room. She paused at the door and said, "Thank you for taking care of the room, not just the show." Heads nodded. People feel taller when their unseen work is named. She walked into the hallway with a calm heart, feeling grateful for the way a rough edge had been smoothed. Keanu finished rehearsal and stood for a moment under the quiet rafters. He thought about how often the best choices look small from the outside. Say thank you. Put names in your mouth. Ask better questions. Keep your voice gentle. He smiled, because gentle does not mean weak. Gentle often does the heaviest lifting. A week later, the show launched a new recurring segment called The People Who Make It Work. Each week, they highlighted a different department: props, sound, hair and makeup, stage management, and asked, "What do you wish the world knew about your craft?" Answers came simple and bright. "We plan for what no one sees. We listen to every breath. We hold time." The segment spread to other shows like a good habit. Producers swapped notes in friendly emails. A guide began to form: how to reset a room, how to name the work, how to keep curiosity sharp and kindness sharper. The guide was short. It fit on a single page. It lived on corkboards and inside show Bibles. It made people brave. The host attended a media school panel and spoke honestly about the arc from mistake to repair. He said, "A better joke is never more important than a better room." Students wrote those words down. A faculty member smiled and added, "Print that." Laughter came, soft and grateful. Learning had been chosen, and that choice was contagious. Sandra and Keanu crossed paths again at a small event for a crew relief fund. They stood to the side, greeting people by name. They listened to stories of long nights, quick saves, and quiet pride. On stage, they said very little. They simply thanked the people who build the work. They reminded the audience that many hands make the light feel warm. The turning point, people later said, was not a single sentence or a single clap. It was the slow, steady choice to honor the work and the workers. It was the choice to call a room back to itself in real time. It was the reminder that dignity does not raise its voice. Dignity raises the people around it. At home, the host kept the 3 prompts on the fridge door. When friends visited, they asked about them. He told the story lightly, with care, and said, "I am grateful for people who gave me the chance to grow." He meant it. The prompts stayed up, not as proof, but as practice. Practice makes tone a habit. And in many rooms far away, where cameras never point, small changes took root. A meeting began with a thank you. A joke was rewritten with a kinder angle. A young staffer's idea was named and used. People paused for a breath when a moment felt thin. The work went on, as it must. But the way of working shifted, as it should. The real changes began to show in quiet ways, the kind most people might miss if they were not paying attention. It started with how meetings opened. The producer would begin by naming one small win from the last show and one person who made it happen. People smiled more in those first minutes. The room felt ready, not rushed. The host carried a folded card in his pocket. On one side, he had written the 3 prompts he kept on his fridge. On the other side, he had written 5 words: ask, listen, honor, share, learn. Before each taping, he touched the card like a tiny handshake with himself. It was not a ritual for the cameras. It was a habit for his heart. Sandra was deep in pre-production for a new film. During the first full team meeting, she did something simple. She asked the assistant director to read a 1-page room agreement aloud. It was not legal language. It was plain and human. It said, "We begin on time. We respect names and roles. We praise in public. We correct in private. We remember that good work needs calm." The team nodded. The page went up on a wall near the call sheet. On Keanu's set, a day's work had many parts that could go wrong. A new rig had to be tested. A camera move needed more practice. Time felt tight. He asked for 5 minutes at lunch for something he called a gratitude circle. People did not have to speak if they did not want to. But many did. A grip thanked a new PA for getting safety cones out fast. The stunt coordinator thanked a medic for catching a detail. The first AC thanked the loader for clear marks. The mood changed. Lunch ended, and the afternoon ran smoother than the morning. The show's writers began to enjoy the challenge of crafting humor that lifted everyone. They found it took more thinking but felt better when it landed. One writer said, "The joke has to hold, even if you are the one in the chair." Another said, "If the target is a risk, aim at the situation, not the person." The whiteboard collected these notes like seeds. By the end of the week, the board looked like a garden. A week later, the network sent over a rating summary and an audience sentiment report. The numbers were steady, but one line made the team smile. The words warm, kind, and respectful showed up more often in viewer comments. The producer underlined those words and sent a short note to everyone: "This is our path." Not every day was smooth. One night, a guest came in with a sharp style and wanted to push lines for a laugh. The host felt a familiar pull. It would be easy to follow that energy. During the first break, he took out the folded card, read it once, and then chose a different road. He asked the guest about a craft choice in their latest scene. The answer surprised the room with its depth. The audience leaned in. The guest softened. By the third segment, the show had found a shared rhythm. Afterwards, the guest said, "Thank you for asking me about my work. I forgot how much I love talking about it." The host smiled. So did the crew. The team added a small step to prep, a 5-minute tone drill. It was simple. Someone would read a question that might go wrong. Then the room would rewrite it into a version that aimed at curiosity and care. The drill took little time and saved many on-air seconds later. It also made new staff feel braver, because they had practiced hard moments when it was safe. Sandra's film began shooting. The first week had rain, a broken heater, and a location change. Spirits could have dipped. Instead, the room agreement helped hold people steady. One evening, when the heater finally worked, the craft team placed a box of thank you cards near the snacks. People wrote quick notes to each other and tucked them into jacket pockets or taped them to gear cases. Small words fueled big days. Keanu kept naming people at the end of each day. He made sure the names were right and the roles were clear. Sometimes he added a detail: "Thank you, Maya, for catching that reflection in the glass, or thank you, Andre, for adjusting the rig so the timing felt safe. People did not just feel seen, they felt understood. A media school invited the host to speak to students about the reset. He walked in with a plain notebook and told the story without dramatic flourishes. He said, "What changed everything was not me being clever. It was me being willing to learn." A student raised a hand and asked, "How do you practice that?" He replied, "By choosing the better question when the easy one turns unkind." The room wrote those words down. The show launched its new weekly segment highlighting different departments. The first week featured sound. A quiet engineer explained how she listens for breathing, clothing rustle, and the way a room holds a voice. The audience clapped as if they had just discovered a new kind of music. The next week featured props. A prop master told a short story about the time a well-timed cup of tea carried a scene. People cheered for the tea. They were really cheering for the care. Social media clips took on a new flavor. Instead of chasing the loudest moment, the team clipped the clearest one. People shared these clips with captions like, "This is how I want my workplace to feel," and, "Saving this for my team meeting." The show's account began to feel like a small library of calm. Sandra received a letter from a high school drama teacher. The letter said, "We read your room agreement to our cast. Rehearsal felt different. Thank you for lending us your page." Sandra wrote back and included a second page her team had added, "How to handle a hard moment." It suggested 5 steps: pause, breathe, name the work, ask a better question, thank the room. The teacher replied with a photo of students clapping. The photo lived on Sandra's desk for the rest of the shoot. Keanu heard from a charity that supports crew families when someone is ill. They asked if he would help bring attention to their work. He said yes and asked the host to feature the charity on the show's new segment. The host agreed right away. The night they aired the piece, donations spiked, but more than that, notes poured in from people saying, "I never knew how much care goes into making us feel calm when we watch." In the studio, the stage manager added one new call to her list. "After places, please," she said, "take care of the room." It was not a rule. It was a reminder. The phrase became a quiet chorus. People repeated it under their breath before a cue. It settled nerves like a kind hand on a shoulder. There were tests. A guest arrived late and flustered. The wardrobe team needed an instant fix. The show was minutes from live. The host could feel the hurry try to pick up the room and shake it. He chose stillness. He walked backstage, thanked the wardrobe team for their fast work, and asked the guest one soft question: "What would make this feel easier?" The guest smiled with relief and said, "2 deep breaths." They took them together. The segment began, and it was warm. The network sent a note months later. They had been watching, not just the show, but the culture effects. They saw fewer on-air scrapes, fewer overnight complaints, and more messages that used words like class, care, and joy. They asked if the show would lead a short internal workshop about tone and teamwork. The producer said yes and built a simple deck with 5 slides. The slides showed short, real moments and the choices that made them better. The workshop felt like a conversation among peers, not a lesson from above. Sandra's film wrapped on schedule. On the last day, the team stood in a circle. The assistant director read the room agreement one more time, not as rules, but as a thank you to the way people had lived them. Sandra spoke last. She said, "You made this room safe for great work. You made it safe for joy." People clapped. Then they ate cake. Laughter felt easy and earned. Keanu's team finished a difficult sequence that needed trust and timing. The stunt team led a final safety review and then a celebration. Keanu thanked them and then asked the quiet rigger who rarely spoke if he would like to say a word. The rigger thanked the group for making space for quiet voices. He said, "I don't always know what to say, but I always know when it's safe to try. That line became a little legend on the set. The host kept growing. He started a short email newsletter for his staff called Better Questions. Each week, he shared one thoughtful question that had worked well and why it had helped. Staff replied with their own examples. The emails were short and kind. People looked forward to them. One evening, the show welcomed a young actor on her first big press night. She sat down with nervous hands. The host opened with a question about the first time she felt proud of a team, not just herself. Her face brightened. She told a story about a college play and a last-minute fix. The audience loved it. The actor left the stage feeling tall. Backstage, she said, "Thank you for making this feel like a real room." The host smiled and said, "That is the goal." The charity segment became a fan favorite. Viewers learned about set medics, translators, caterers, and drivers. People wrote, "I never thought about how many hands guide a day." The show sent a simple postcard to each featured team, "Thank you for teaching us." The biggest consequence could not be measured in numbers or clips. It lived in the choices people made when no one was watching. It lived in the way a joke was softly rewritten. It lived in a pause before a sharp word. It lived in a hand raised to say, "We can ask that in a kinder way." It lived in rooms that were not only productive but also peaceful. One night, months after the first tense episode, the host closed the show with a short reflection. He looked into the camera and said, "We all share rooms at work, at home, in our communities. We all get to choose what kind of room it will be. Thank you for choosing with us." The band played a hopeful line. The lights faded like a calm breath. Sandra, watching from a quiet hotel room, smiled and sent a good night message to her team. Keanu, reading a call sheet for the next day, underlined 3 names he planned to thank. In studios and stages far away, people kept making good rooms on purpose. The work continued. The care continued. The lesson stayed simple and strong. Dignity can be firm and gentle at the same time, and when we honor people, the whole house stands taller. A season turned, and a year gently unfolded. What began as one careful night became a steady way of doing the work. It did not arrive with banners or big speeches. It arrived in quiet habits that held when things were hard. People could feel the change in their bones, the way you can feel a good chair support your back without calling attention to itself. The show kept its calm tempo. The crew kept their soft rhythm. The audience kept coming back, not only for laughs, but for the easy trust the room gave them. Sandra's new film entered the editing stage. She visited the post-production studio with a small box of cookies and a printed copy of the room agreement. She thanked the editors for shaping long days into clear stories. She asked what helped them most when a scene was tricky. An editor smiled and said, "Time to listen," and another said, "Clear notes, kind tone." Sandra laughed softly and replied, "That we can do." On the wall, someone had taped the words, "Good rooms are made on purpose." It made her heart warm. Keanu finished his project and hosted a little gathering for the team. It was not fancy. It was a simple room with wooden chairs and soft light. People brought stories, not speeches. A set builder shared a moment when a tiny change saved a big day. A driver told how a smile at the gate can start a shift on the right foot. Keanu listened like a student. He named people. He remembered details. He thanked the quiet ones who had never held a microphone. When the night ended, no one wanted to rush out. They stood in small circles, choosing to linger because the room felt safe. The host kept growing in public. He did not rush past the lesson or try to dress it up. He made space for it every week in little ways. When a guest arrived nervous, he asked a gentle question about their craft. When a joke could tilt unkind, he steered to curiosity. When he missed a beat, he said so plainly and moved forward with care. People trusted that he would take care of the room. That trust felt like sunlight through a clean window. You may not stare at the glass, but you feel the brightness it lets in. Schools began to write in more often. A teacher from a small town shared how her class used the room agreement to start rehearsals. A student wrote, "We put names on the board, then we asked better questions. Our play felt calm and strong." A college invited the show's producer to talk about live timing and soft skills. The producer walked in with a short deck and a long smile. She said, "Our best tool is simple. Is it kind? Is it true? Is it helpful?" Pens moved. Heads nodded. The students took the page home like a map. The show created a small public resource online called the Room Kit. It was one page people could print and use anywhere. It held 5 lines: begin on time, learn names, praise in public, correct in private, end with thanks. It also held 5 small prompts for hard moments: pause, breathe, name the work, ask the kinder question, thank the room. It was simple enough to tape next to a coffee machine, and many people did. Photos arrived from offices, classrooms, clinics, and kitchens. The kit did not make headlines. It made rooms better. That was enough. One evening, the host invited Sandra and Keanu back, not for a reunion story, but to spotlight a crew relief fund and a youth training program. The set felt like a community hall. They spoke little and listened much. A young technician told how a mentor had taught her to coil a cable with pride. A student explained how one calm question from a teacher changed the way he thought about nerves. The band played a soft line. The cameras framed faces with space. The audience clapped as if they were in the same room, because in a way, they were. After the show, they stood in the hallway among coiled cables and folded chairs. Sandra looked at Keanu and said, "It still surprises me how a gentle choice can move so much." He nodded and replied, "Gentle is strong when it is steady." The host joined them with a grateful smile. "Thank you for giving me the chance to fix a moment," he said. Sandra shook her head kindly. "You fixed it by choosing," she replied. "We just held the door." They laughed, not loudly, but with that warm feeling that settles in when people mean what they say. At home, the host kept sending his weekly better questions note. One week he wrote, "What did you learn from the quietest person in the room?" Replies poured in. A stage manager wrote about a shy intern who solved a timing puzzle. A makeup artist shared how a soft check-in saved a day. The host read each note carefully and sent small thanks back. He could feel how these exchanges built a net across the team. If someone slipped, the net would hold. Sandra received a handwritten card from a young host who was starting her first interview show. The card said, "I was scared I would say the wrong thing. Your lesson helped me ask the kinder question instead." Sandra placed the card next to the photo of students clapping and the worn room agreement page. She kept these small reminders close, like a pocket compass she could touch without looking. Keanu visited a community center where students were learning stagecraft. He watched them tape marks on the floor and test light levels. He asked their names and what they liked about the work. A student said, "I like making it feel calm," and another said, "I like when it looks easy because it means we did all the hard steps before." Keanu smiled and said, "You already understand something big." He left them with a simple sentence, "Thank you for taking care of the room." The words hung in the air like a good echo. The industry noticed in its own way. No big trophy arrived at a blinking podium, but something better happened. More shows began their day with a short tone check. More sets hung simple agreements near the call sheet. More panels for students talked about kindness with the same energy they used for camera lenses and microphones. When people wrote about the show, they used words like steady, clear, and warm. The team printed those words and taped them in the control room where everyone could see them. One night, the host closed the show with a small reflection. He looked at the camera and said, "We often think a good room is soft. But a good room is strong. It can hold hard work, hard days, and hard truths, because it is built with care. He thanked the audience and the crew. He thanked the guests for trusting the space. He thanked the band for the music that carried their steps. The credits rolled over faces, not graphics. People at home smiled because they felt included. In places far from the studio, the lesson kept traveling. A hospital team used the kit to open morning rounds. A restaurant posted a tiny sign in the prep room, "Take care of the room." A soccer coach taught players to thank the grounds crew before practice. A family put the 3 prompts on their fridge. They used them before tough talks. The house grew quieter, not because they said less, but because they chose words that helped. The host kept the folded card in his pocket, edges softened by time. On a day when a segment went sideways, he touched the card and found his balance. He asked the better question. The guest answered with their whole heart. The audience leaned in. The moment turned. Later he wrote to his team, "We do not avoid storms. We learn how to steer." They replied with the small boat emoji, which became an inside joke and a tender promise. Sandra wrapped another project and took a walk by a quiet lake. She thought about all the rooms she had entered in her life, sets and stages, classrooms and community halls, kitchens and living rooms. She smiled at the idea that a room is something you build even when the walls are already standing. You build it with tone. You build it with time. You build it with thank yous that land in the right places. Keanu sat at a small desk and wrote a short note to a friend who was starting a new crew. He wrote, "Begin simple. Name names. Ask the kind question when you feel the rush. End with thanks." He placed the note in an envelope and felt calm, the way you feel after putting a tool back in its home. He knew the work would keep going. He knew the care would, too. And somewhere in a city full of lights and late dinners and last buses, a person watched the clip of that long ago night for the first time. They did not see drama. They saw a room return to itself. They saw a host choose care, a guest redirect with grace, and a friend set a better tone. They closed their laptop and wrote 3 lines on a sticky note. They placed it where their eyes would land in the morning. It said, "Is it kind? Is it true? Is it helpful?" It also said, "Take care of the room." The work did not become easy. It became clear. People still had deadlines and budgets and long days and short tempers. But under all that, they had a path. When a moment wobbled, they knew where to place a steady hand. When a word tilted sharp, they knew how to smooth its edge. When a room felt thin, they knew how to thicken it with names, thanks, and better questions. This was the change that lasted. Not the clip. Not the trending line. The change was a habit inside many hands and voices. It traveled quietly, like a lamp being carried from one room to another, lighting each space without noise. It left a simple message wherever it went, a message that fit in the smallest pocket and the busiest heart. Dignity can be firm and gentle at the same time, kindness is not slow, and gratitude is a skill you can practice every day. And when you practice it, the whole house stands taller.